right, so we are back here with the white Juke. I have the turbo fully bolted up. I got the fitting I was waiting on, which is a push lock -10 for oil drain. That is on. The oil drain line is run. I've got our coolant hoses hooked up. Heater core hoses are also hooked up. I got the gasket made and is sitting in the intake manifold. I do have to do some modifications though, because the A8 sits at a different angle from the 1.6. The manifold kind of gets shifted that way. So I got to do on this what I've done on the past two that I've had this style intake manifold on, and I'm just going to have to take this mount off, and then this ear right here will pretty much just get ground down. It won't go all the way through, but just ground down enough to clear the throttle body going on there. And then that will set that on there all the way. And then I can tighten this all the way down, because right now, obviously, it's making impact. So I got that done. I got that fuel fitting I was waiting on. So the fuel line is now officially fully installed and tight. I got the gear oil the other day that I was waiting on, but I'm just gonna take care of that now so I can get under and just get this thing so that I can just put it on the ground and I don't have to lift it up anymore. I do still have to go pick up the bolt from Nissan for the AC compressor. Can't forget to do that. So the goal for today is get this fully bolted on, which means getting this modified, getting everything under the car done to the point where I can just put this thing down and doesn't have to go back up again, and then get everything on this side sorted out and bleed the clutch. Lofty goals, but that's the goal. Last thing I usually do is put the radiator in and fill it with coolant, because you know it's just going to go in. I do have to order a new oil feed line for this, so that's just going to delay this a couple of days, which isn't going to start for a couple of days, so it's not that big of a deal. So I got to get an oil feed line for this, because the factory 1.6 oil feed line feeds off from down there, whereas the A8, that port on the cylinder head is blocked off. It could be machined out, but it's not worth it when you can just run the sandwich adapter that we already run and just run a port off of that as your oil feed line, which is what we've done for the A8 head conversions that we've done. So I'm gonna do that, but it's coming along swimmingly. I still have to run the main vacuum port over to here, which might require modifying that. It looks like it might hit, but we'll find out. So we're getting there. The gear oil's in there, it's the empty tubs. So that's done. So I think what I'm gonna do is actually work on this stuff over here. This right here is gonna require me holding the engine up from underneath, and I don't really wanna do that right now. Oh, I also changed the oil filter and put some oil in it. Oh, sorry, I didn't put oil in it. I changed the oil filter, didn't put oil in it. So, because I gotta do the oil feed line. So yeah, I think I'm gonna work on getting all this stuff sorted out. The vacuum manifold bolted down, the shift linkage hooked up. Once I have that stuff done and I bleed all I have left to do is bleed the clutch, I can actually put the radiator back in it. So it'd be one less thing that's not in the car. So yeah. All right, so we have our support bracket, whatever you want to call this, down. We have our catch can in and plumbed into the valve cover. We've got our wiring all routed, so everything over here is pretty much good to go with the exception of bleeding the clutch. I modified our mount so that the throttle now fits. The only problem is, and I didn't think about this, is usually I mount the throttles like this, but you can see that's a bit of a problem. You can see where we have an issue there, even with that bolt out. So this one's gonna have to get mounted like this, which isn't the end of the world. I just have to verify that there's hood clearance, which there should be, because there's several inches above this available. These hoods turn down really weird. You really don't really run into clearance problems until you get to like over the alternator. So we'll check that. If that becomes an issue, then I'll just have to get into modifying this some more. Just is what it is in the custom world, but this is fully bolted in. So we can hook up the vacuum line to that now. And then I gotta get the radiator in here. And then I gotta get the intercooler on the front so I can start working on the new piping, because we do have to change that because the position of the turbo is different. Not a big deal. And we have to change over here because the position of this is different. Again, not a big deal. So we're coming right along. I've got my trigger wheel here. I'm gonna cut out a new design for the bracket that I want to try. That's a little more stable. I know stable's not the right word. It's beefier. Not that we've had any problems, but there's always room for improvement. The next thing I'm gonna do, just to tackle the rest of the vacuum system, is we gotta remove this port, this here. So we can put a port on there so we can hook up a boost controller. And then I'm trying to just get all the hardware stuff done so that I can finish up the wiring. So like we have our input for flex fuel that we gotta do. We have our pressure sensor here that we need to hook up. This has an oil pressure gauge in it, but I do want to give oil pressure to the fuel tech, so we need to sort that out, which I might just use the output from the oil pressure gauge to do that. I have to create new wiring for the factory map sensor. I need to tap into the factory map sensor's temp sensor for the fuel tech because we need that reading instead of adding another sensor. I know the scaling on that sensor, so that'll work fine. So we're really moving along here. I need to go get that damn bolt. I keep forgetting. All right, and here we have our crank bracket. The way I used to make them was I would actually drill and tap this side and drill here and countersink in a bolt so you had more adjustability. But I found after installing a lot of these that the adjustability of these slots is really all you need. So I got to get 2 bolts that are longer than those so I can pop this on. I got to modify this. What I used to do was take the crank pulley bolt and basically shave off the top of it, but now what I do instead is I just drill this hole out to be even bigger. It's a bit of a pain in the butt because this is a pretty thick steel, but it's just a little easier that way. And it also makes it so that if the customer ever has to take off the crank pulley, if you have only half of that head, the odds of you stripping it if you're not holding like an impact gun the right way are pretty high. So we're gonna go ahead and drill that out to 3/4 of an inch. And then I can get this bolted on, and that'll be that. All right, we got this on here. Obviously not bolted down yet. So we gotta bolt that down so that we can put on our bracket. I also forgot to mention that the new bolt from Nissan is here for the AC compressors. That's all in. So we'll get that hooked up. I got to mark where the TDC mark is on the pulley onto the signal plate, and then I have to mark, I need to mark where that is in relation to the crank sensor, because the factory one is going to go to the sensor thing that's like right there, and obviously that's not where our crank sensor is reading from anymore. So we have to just figure out TDC in relation to that. All right, we got the bracket on, the sensor's in, this is bolted on. I gotta spin it over to make sure that it's perfectly centered. And then I gotta get the lock nut for this, but we're not gonna lock that in place until I know that this is centered, which it should be pretty close to centered. So once there's oil in it, I can start cranking it over, check the center on that, and then hook up the fuel tech and do the timing for that. For the time being, I'm kind of just done with that. I gotta put a belt on it too, but I'm gonna do the belt after I get the timing set. And the reason I wanna do that is I don't wanna have to use a ton of power to crank this over. If the accessories are hooked up, it's just more effort it's gonna have to put out. So we have that done. Still waiting on the oil feed line stuff to get here, but I think I should be okay to put the intercooler on it and start working on that piping. We got heaps of room over that throttle body. Cool. So we're just gonna have to leave it like that. Intercooler piping, this looks like it's gonna work, which is great. This pipe I need to remake. It's got meth injection holes in it and crazy map sensor locations, and so I'm gonna remake this, but that's pretty easy as far as fitment goes. Fits right in there perfect. I know the rest of the intercooler is gonna fit because, you know, haven't moved that stuff. So I gotta order up a flange for this. I have the piping for this. Next I wanna check the intake. I know that doesn't fit. But we were limited to a 2.5 inch inlet for the MAF sensor to get the drivability as best we could. But now we can actually go up to an actual 3 inch. So we're gonna just make a new intake, slap that on there just so it has a reading going over it. We'll have to jam the filter down in here more or get a smaller filter. But we'll definitely got to remake the intake, unfortunately. It is what it is. How well this is gonna show up because, you know, frame rates and all, but we got sensor tight. Got our gap set. So now we can put this wheel on it and this thing is ready to just go on the ground. So everything else I gotta do doesn't need to be up on the lift. And I do need my lift back because got dyno stuff happening where I need this side of the garage. So that's exciting. I got impatient waiting for the battery to charge, so, you know, boost box to the rescue. And some of what I got to do is in the car, so it'll be easier to do with it not in the shop. So everything sounds really good when it cranks. So that's good.